The harbor woke to the scream of gulls and the groan of old wood settling against the tide. It was a bright morning, so clear the sea looked like glass shattered into a million glittering shards. I walked the pier with my coffee going cold in my hand, watching fishing boats idle out toward the horizon, their wakes folding into a silver path. It was the kind of morning that makes you believe in good luck, in clean slates, in the promise that the day might give you something you didn't know you needed. That's when I saw it, a slick of foam curling around the barnacle-crusted pylons, and within it, a corner of something dark and heavy. A book? A wallet? I leaned over the rail, nearly spilling my coffee down my own shirt, and fished it out with a boat hook. What came up was a leather roll, swollen with salt and stiff as a board. It had been bound with twine that disintegrated the moment I touched it, and the leather cracked as I worked it open. Inside was a map. Or at least it had been a map once. Water had bled the ink into ghosts. The coastlines had drifted into abstract shapes, the place names run like watercolor paint. Yet there was one word the sea had spared, written in a looping, ornate script at the center of the ragged parchment, as if whatever wrote it knew exactly where to press so the ink would survive. Luxuria. It sounded like a warning and a promise at the same time. I said it aloud, and the word felt heavy in my mouth, something that belonged in cathedrals or whispered over candlelight, not spat into the brine-scented wind. I took the map back to the shop. My shop, if you want to call it that. An overstuffed room I share with antique diving gear, salvaged portholes, and books whose spines have given up holding their pages. People bring me oddities. They lay them on my counter like fish laid out for weighing. Rusty coins, ship bells, diaries that smear into blue mush when you breathe on them. I've always had a knack for piecing together their stories. The map with its single intact word became a fixation. I smoothed it under glass, hit it with a hairdryer that smelled of hot salt, and laid it under a magnifying lamp. In the faintest gray shadow, I could just make out the ghost of a reef formation, the suggestion of a harbor cut into a coastline that didn't match any modern chart. And in the bottom corner, beneath a smear that might have been a tiny sketch of a ship, someone had pressed the nib hard enough to score the paper. 3 words remained if you knew how to look for them: gold, Rolls-Royce, and unspeakable. That last one seemed to pulse off the page like heat. I did the sensible thing. I ignored it for exactly 1 evening, then went down the rabbit hole. Public archives, shipping registries, any record of an unusual car being lost at sea. A Rolls-Royce is not the sort of thing you misplace like a set of keys. It is an active statement. The names that surfaced were old money families who'd made fortunes in sugar and oil, shipping magnates who considered the ocean their front yard. Then I found an obituary from 1934, 3 columns in a society page. Lord Cedric Hawthorne, lost at sea under suspicious circumstances, survived by a wife who refused to speak to the press, and a brother who spent his inheritance buying islands no one wanted. His yacht, the Luxuria, had gone down during a storm. The article mentioned a custom Rolls-Royce Silver Ghost, a show car, transported aboard like a trophy. It called the loss incalculable. The word unspeakable didn't appear, the circumstances, but it hummed in the margins. I stared at the map again. Luxuria, a ship, a sin, a secret. The next morning, I took it to the one person who could tell me if I was chasing a ghost. Old Man Harrow owned the shack at the far end of the dock, where the divers drank their coffee and swapped stories that grew with every retelling. His face had the texture of rope, and his eyes were the pale blue of a winter sea. He squinted at the paper, then poured a shot of whiskey into a chipped cup and pushed it toward me. "You found that word where it didn't belong," he said. "If you know what's good for you, you'll burn it." I told him about the Rolls-Royce. Harrow let out a breath that carried the scent of smoke and salt. He looked over my shoulder, out to where the water knocked against the pier like a polite guest. "We had a saying when I was young," he said. "Don't go looking for luxuria." Those who found it never came back. Not whole. The boy who pulled a gold coin from the reef there came home and burned his own house down. The girl who found a necklace in a bottle lost her voice. It's a place. It's a curse. And yes, it's where the car went down. That's what my grandfather told me. A car made of gold and secrets, sent to the bottom by a man who didn't want anyone to know what it carried. He took a sip from the cup, then pushed it further toward me. The storm that took the luxuria came out of nowhere. The survivors, if you could call them that, spoke of a cold so sudden it turned breath to frost. They said the sea went flat and black, like oil. They said the captain prayed in Latin as the yacht bucked like a horse in a slaughterhouse. The Rolls-Royce broke free of its cradle. When they found a body, it was inside the car or the car was around the body. Accounts differ. And there was gold. Gold inlay, gold trim, a hood ornament cast in pure bullion. Enough to tempt any diver. But the ocean took everyone who tried, every single one. "So why didn't they send a recovery team?" I asked. "A thing like that would be insured to the sky." Harrow smiled without showing his teeth. The Hawthorne family did send a team. The first one never came back. The second one came back with one man and he couldn't speak for the screaming. His eyes were white all the way through. After that, the family put out a story that the car had been melted down, that the gold had been repurposed to stop the treasure hunters. But they were careful to never dive there themselves. They paid other people to forget. And the map. He tapped the paper. This map was made by a man who didn't forget. He tried to mark the place without writing the name, but the sea preserved what it wanted. I walked out of his shack with the taste of whiskey in my throat and a fire in my head. You don't tell a man with a camera and a microphone to forget. Not when the word luxuria hangs in the air like a bell someone has struck. Within a week, I had a team. Not a big one, not the kind that shows up with cranes and press releases. This was the salvage world's version of a garage band. Mal, a hard hat diver with hands like shovels and a laugh that could roll bottles across a table. He could hold his breath until your lungs ached just watching. June, our boat captain and tender. A woman who could read weather like poetry and make an old trawler purr like a cat. Rook, our tech wizard, who showed up with 3 drones, a sonar rig, and an antique metal detector he swore he'd married in a ceremony involving tequila and friends who should have stopped him. And me, with the map and a microphone, because stories are a kind of tool, too. We chose our moment on a tideless night when the moon was a splinter. The ocean looked polished. We drifted over the coordinates I'd extrapolated from the map's ghosts, and Rook dropped the side-scan sonar. The screen lit up like a dream. The seabed down here is a graveyard of ships. You can read the shapes, ribs of old trawlers, the skeletal circle of a collapsed boiler. Then we saw it. A long, elegant shape, too regular to be a rock, too solid to be a shadow. It lay in a shallow depression, half buried in silt, with coral growing from it in gnawed fingers. It could have been a car. It could have been a casket. Mal went in first. The water was warm on the surface, but when he broke below the thermocline, the cold hit like a fist. He told us later it felt like he'd plunged into liquid metal. He described the world in hushed words while we listened over comms, with the hiss of the regulator painting a white noise behind his voice. He went down slow, letting the pressure adjust, kicking up ghosts of sand that drifted like snow. Lights cut cones through the murk. Fish hovered in the edges, unimpressed. Then the shape resolved. He swore softly, the word transmitted as a rush of bubbles. "Oh, you are not going to believe this." What he saw was a car, not just any car. It was the Rolls-Royce, but transformed by time into something that belonged in a nightmare dreamt by kings. It had sunk on its side, driver's door crumpled, grillwork blossoming with anemones. The gold trim had not tarnished. If anything, it seemed to glow with a light of its own. A woman with arms outstretched toward a dawn she would never see was pure gold, miraculously intact. Coral had laced the body in patterns that were almost like writing. The windows were dark. The interior was a shadow you could fall into. Mal circled it, his light sweeping over the paint. It had once been white, he thought, or maybe silver. The gold leaf had been applied in extravagant swirls, the kind of detail you only see in museums. The tires had melted away long ago, leaving the rims half sunk in sediment. He reached out and touched the gold hood ornament, then jerked his hand back as if burned. Something moved in the car. Not a fish. Something that shifted in the seat, as if a passenger had just sat up. He told us he saw a shape in the driver's seat. Not a body, not anymore. A thing that had been a body and now wore coral like a crown. It had a glint at its throat and a ring on one finger that looked like an eye staring out of a pit. He didn't touch it. He said he felt a cold pressure in his head, like someone holding ice against his temples. "We need to bring it up," I said. "We need to see it." June's voice crackled on the comm. "Careful, the tide's turning. If we get stuck down there..." Mal began rigging the lift bags. He worked with a practiced economy, looping lines around the chassis, checking attachment points that had rusted into the metal. We had a small crane on the boat, a winch that could pull an engine block from a bay. It would need to be enough. The car looked heavier than anything we'd ever hauled. As he worked, the water grew colder. "I don't mean the way it does when you sink." June felt it up top. She rubbed her arms and stared at the glassy surface, which seemed suddenly filmed with a greasy sheen. Rook glanced at his instruments. The temperature reading from Mal's suit dropped 5 degrees in a minute. He tapped the sensor. "It's not malfunctioning. It's really getting colder." "Mal, come up," June said. "Take a breath. Something's off." "I just need another minute," he said. He was wrestling with a line that had snagged under the car. "I can see something inside." Maybe a safe. Papers. Through the camera feed, I saw what he meant. A metal box lay on the floorboards, half buried. It had a lock that looked like a puzzle. The letters LUX were etched into the lid. His gloved hand brushed silt away, and the box shifted. Something inside clicked. The car groaned, not like metal settling, but like a living thing disturbed. The gold hood ornament glowed brighter. "Mal!" I shouted. "Back off!" "It's fine," he said. Then the silence came. But his voice had a tremor, not the gentle quiet of deep water. "It's just a box." This was a pressure, a weight that pressed into your skull and stopped the small sounds you don't notice until they're gone. The hiss of the regulator, the tiny clicks of your joints, the beat of your own heart. Mal's breathing sped up. He clawed at his chest. His regulator alarm began to chirp, a thin electronic panic. He wasn't out of air. The sensor said he had plenty, but he couldn't draw a breath. Up top, the surface went dull, like a mirror rubbed with grease. The boat rocked in a swell that shouldn't have existed. June gripped the wheel, her knuckles white. Rook's drone, hovering over the site, suddenly pitched sideways as if slapped. It crashed into the water, its camera feeding us a last spinning image of the car, and then darkness. Mal was thrashing. He'd kicked free of the line, and his ascent was uncontrolled, a desperate scramble for the light. We hauled him up. When his head broke the surface, he ripped his mask off and vomited seawater, gasping, his eyes wild. He could talk, but his voice was raw. He said, "I felt it. There's someone in there, someone who doesn't want to be disturbed." He held out his hand. In his palm was a gold coin, tarnished at the edges, stamped with a profile of a woman whose face looked too much like the hood ornament to be coincidence. On one side, an inscription, Luxuria. On the other, a date, 1934. We sat there in the wobbling light of the cabin, the coin a dense weight in all our minds. That night, I took the map to my shop and stared at it until the lights in the storefronts went out one by one. The word Luxuria looked like a mouth. When I closed my eyes, I heard a sound like a church organ playing underwater. The next day we went back. You would tell yourself you wouldn't. You'd tell yourself you'd burn the map, sell the coin, and drink whiskey with Harrow until the story went sour. But we are built to push at the silence when it warns us. It's a terrible design flaw, and the only reason we haven't gone extinct is that some of us are lucky. We brought more gear. Rook had built a rig with pingers and strobes to ward off whatever bad luck lived in the water. June had hung garlic from the boat's compass, a superstition she claimed had kept her alive through 2 hurricanes. Mal swore he'd dive again. His eyes were bloodshot, but his jaw was set. If there was something in there, he said, it owed him an explanation. This time we went down as a team. I went with Mal in the second dive, my camera rolling, my heart hammering a rhythm against my ribs. We descended through layers of cold until the world became a blue memory. The car was still there, half buried, glowing faintly like an ember under ash. The gold trim had a sheen that didn't seem to reflect our lights. It looked like it was generating the light. The hood ornament's outstretched arms seemed to have moved, reaching higher. Mal pointed. The box was still inside, sitting where we left it. He had me stay back while he approached, hands open, slow. "We don't want trouble," he said, and laughed because the absurdity needed release. The sound of his voice in my ears was a comfort against the oppressive hush. He reached for the box. His fingers hovered over the lock. LUX. He turned the dial. It moved with a click, easy as breathing. The lid sprang open. The interior was lined in velvet that had not rotted. Inside lay a book bound in gold leaves, with a clasp shaped like a serpent eating its own tail. Mal lifted it. The serpent's eyes were rubies. They flared in our lights like tiny embers. The book fell open to a page that was blank, except for names written in the same elegant script as the map. Hundreds of names, inked in varying hands. At the bottom was a space with a date. Today's the page date shifted. Ink bled onto it from nowhere, and new letters formed. Mal, June, Rook. And then, in a hand that was too neat to be human, my name. We stared. The water went colder. The silence pressed until my vision narrowed into a tunnel. I felt a voice in my head that was not mine, a smooth, cultured whisper like a gentleman in a smoking room. It said, "Thank you for coming. The debt must be paid. You will bring the car up. You will bring it to the surface. And then you will understand what Luxuria costs." I tried to close the book. It wouldn't shut. The pages stuck as if glued by the pressure. The whisper grew louder, shaping itself around my skull. "You will bring it up. You will bring it up." Mal's regulator alarm went off again. He let go of the book and it fell back into the box, but the whisper remained. It was in my head now. In yours too, if you're listening. I could feel the weight of choices not yet made. If we left it there, the ocean would keep it, and maybe the world would be better for it. If we brought it up, we would be rich and ruined. I signaled to Mal. We go up. We think. We ascended with the hush following us like a shadow. When we broke the surface, the sun felt thick, almost syrupy. June pulled us aboard and wrapped us in towels that smelled of salt and motor oil. We told her what we saw. Her face went pale. Rook stared at the sonar screen as if it might speak. We need to decide, I said. The boat rocked under a sky that seemed too low. Mal held the gold coin. He'd taken it from his pocket, though none of us remembered him pocketing it. It was warm. It hummed. I have debts, he said softly. Medical. My sister's. This could change everything. But that voice, I don't want it in my head. Rook nodded. Same, but think about what it means. A car made of gold, a book of names. Maybe someone worse. It's bigger than us. If we leave put a hand on the someone wheel, else will find it. She looked at the horizon like she was reading lines there. The ocean has been trying to keep this secret. It isn't ours to tell, but we've seen it. That makes it ours too. The whisper returned. It wrapped around my thoughts like warm smoke. It made the world look simple. Take it. Keep it. You deserve it. All you have to do is pull. I closed my eyes and remembered the morning I found the map. I thought of Harrow's the way the word luxuria had felt like a spell. Of the boy who burned his house down. Of the girl who lost her voice. I thought of the name inked onto that page. My name. I could feel the pressure of fate pressing on my chest. The thing in the car wanted to be raised. It needed us to lift it into the light where it could finish something. I opened my eyes. Let's bring it up, I said. But we do it my way. We spent the afternoon rigging. We doubled the lines, added 3 more lift bags, and bolted a frame to the side of the boat to guide the car up without smashing it against the hull. June brought out a silver charm she kept in a box with old bullets and a compass that didn't work. She hung it from the crane's hook. Rook built a device that emitted a pulsing tone at a frequency he swore would disrupt hauntings. It was the audio equivalent of a moth beating its wings against a porch light. I wrote the date on my forearm in waterproof ink, the same way the book had done. If it wanted names, it would have to take mine from my skin. We waited for the tide to slacken. The water turned the color of slate. The whisper in our heads grew insistent, polite as a butler with a knife behind his back. It offered images, a mansion with windows like eyes, a check with enough zeros to make you dizzy, a legacy written in marble. It suggested we could be kings. It told us a secret about the world that made everything seem possible. When the moment came, we dropped into the blue again. The cold arrived with a timetable. My hands ached inside my gloves. Mal swam like a man who'd made peace with a choice he didn't fully understand. We returned to the car. It seemed bigger. The gold had taken on a luster like a midnight sun. The hood ornament's arms were raised in triumph, or surrender. We attached the hooks. We looped the lines with the care of surgeons. The book sat in its box, the serpent's eyes watching. The whisper in my head said, "Thank you." It sounded like it was smiling. We gave the signal. The winch on the boat began to turn. The line tightened. The car shifted, shedding a curtain of sand and small creatures that had made a home in it. It came free with a groan that was felt rather than heard. It rose, slow at first, then with gathering certainty. The sea resisted, not with waves, but with a weight. The water around us thickened down. Our lights frayed at the edges. My ears popped twice. Halfway up, the driver's door swung open. It moved with unnatural grace. The opening was a black mouth. Something drifted out. A sheet of paper, preserved perfectly, tumbling through the water like a leaf falling in reverse. I caught it. The paper was warm. On it was a letter, written in a neat hand. To whoever finds this, it began. If you are reading it, You have
I am
done what I
sorry.
could not. The car is
You
not
have
what it
reached
seems.
luxuria.
It is a vessel, not for a body, but for a debt. My father made a bargain to secure our fortune. He thought he could outsmart the ocean. He thought gold could weigh down a promise. The car was his monument. When it sank, the debt came due. It has been collecting names. It will take yours, and you will be rich, and you will be bound. Burn the book. Sink the car again, if you can. I could not. The signature was a smear, as if the writer had been crying. The date was the same as the map. The whisper in my head laughed. It was not a sound. It was the absence of sound. It said, "Too late." It said, "Look up." The car broke the surface with us hauling at the lines like men trying to pull down the moon. The sunlight hit the gold, and the gold drank it. The boat's engine stuttered. June swore and turned the key. The motor caught, coughed, and settled into a reluctant thrum. We guided the car to the frame. It slid into place with a heavy clank that echoed across the water. Every gull in the harbor fell silent. The sea went dead calm. We stared at the thing we had raised. It was beautiful and obscene. Gold traced patterns that looked like faces in agony and faces in ecstasy. The hood ornament wept a thin oil that might have been seawater, might have been something else. The interior smelled of old leather and something sweet, like rotting flowers. The box with the book had fastened itself shut, but the serpent's eyes glowed now in daylight. Mal leaned against the rail, shaking. His hands left damp prints. He said, "What now?" I thought of the letter. Burn the book, sink the car again. I thought of the names. Mine, June's, Rook's, Mal's. I thought of the whisper. It had stopped trying to persuade me. It was waiting, patient as a tide. "We can't sell this," I said. "Not as is. The moment it touches land, the debt goes active. It turns gold into chains." Rook nodded. "Then we sink it again." "But how do we do that without losing our minds?" The whisper answered, as if it had heard. "You don't. Not without a sacrifice." June's face hardened. She looked at the car, then at us. "No one is dying. Not today. We find another way." I lifted the book. It was heavy now, the pages pressing against the cover like they wanted out. I opened it to my name. It had inked itself deeper, into the paper itself. I could feel the letters in my chest. The whisper tickled the edge of my thoughts. It offered an alternative, a small thing, a signature, a promise to bring the book to land and leave the car. The debt would transfer. It would become ours alone, but manageable. It would make us rich beyond dreams and miserable beyond measure. I closed my eyes. I imagined a life where my name was on that page, where every time I bought something, I paid with a little piece of myself. I imagined Mal's sister's medical bills vanishing, Rook's studio funded, June's boat new and proud. It would be easy. It would be a relief. The whisper showed me a house on a hill, the ocean a blue ribbon from the porch. Then I imagined the silence that comes after you say yes. The way the world would sound muffled, as if you were always underwater. I opened my eyes. "No," I said. "Not like that." I pulled out my lighter. It was an old brass thing I used for signaling. The flame stood up in the breeze, a tiny defiance. The whisper shifted, turned into a hiss. The book's pages fluttered in my hands, though there was no wind. "You can't burn it," the whisper said. "It is protected by the ocean." "Then I'll ask the ocean nicely," I said, and I meant it to sound brave, but it came out as a plea. I jumped into the water. It was colder than before, the kind of cold that stops hearts. I held the book above my head. The gold coin in my pocket thrummed like a trapped bee. I kicked down toward the car, which hung half submerged, its gold casting warped reflections. I shouted into the murk, not words but a sound, a release, a thank you, an apology. I told the ocean that we didn't mean to pry, that we'd found the map by chance, that we were foolish and maybe brave. I told it the debt was not ours to carry. I struck the lighter. The flame sputtered in the water, almost went out. then held. It burned blue and strange. I pressed it to the corner of the book. The pages caught, not with heat, but with light. They glowed, then dissolved into sparks that drifted upward like a reverse snowfall. The names lifted from the page, my own included, and swirled in the water around me. They looked like fish made of letters. They were beautiful and terrible. The whisper screamed. It was a voice made of money and shame and hunger. It clawed at my mind. It offered me everything. It threatened everyone. I held the book until the cover was gone, the serpent clasp falling away like a dead snake. The last page turned to ash, and with it, the inscription of dates. The book was gone, leaving only the empty box in the car, its velvet lining revealed like a tongue. The gold in the car dimmed, the hood ornament's arms lowered. The lettering on the body blurred and flaked off, turning to dust that drifted away in clouds. The car settled on the frame with a sigh. The whisper
When I
was
surfaced,
silent. Gasping, June and Mal hauled me aboard. They wrapped me in blankets and pressed hot coffee into my hands. I could have sworn the sun was brighter. The gulls had returned, screaming their heads off. Rook laughed, a high, unsteady sound. The coin I'd carried was gone, dissolved. The gold I'd touched had left no mark on my gloves. We drifted for a while, watching the car. It looked like an ordinary car now, an antique, ruined by salt and time. The gold was gone, leaving behind dull metal and pitted chrome. The horror had been in the promise, not the metal. The promise was broken. June touched the frame. So that's it? We just sink it again? I nodded. This time as a burial, not a curse. We owe it that. We cut the lift bags. We opened the valves on the ones we could reach. The car sank slowly, the water closing over it with a sound like a door shutting. It touched the bottom and rolled onto its side, settling into the sand with a gentle puff. The sea took it without fuss. We watched until the bubbles stopped rising. On the way back, the engine purred like a cat. The sky stretched high and clean. We didn't talk much. At the dock, I went to Harrow's shack. He poured 2 whiskeys. I told him what we did. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he nodded once, as if I'd confirmed a suspicion he'd held for 50 years. "You were lucky," he said. "The ocean likes courage. It likes humility even more." I asked him what luxuria really meant. He smiled. "It means excess. It means hunger that never sleeps. It means the thing you want more than life itself, and the price you pay for it. People think gold is heavy, but it's light compared to a secret. The car was a coffin for a promise. The book was a ledger. You burned the ledger. That was the only way." I slept that night with the windows open, listening to the harbor breathe. In the morning, I took the map to my shop and framed it. I left the word luxuria visible. It's a reminder. Some days I trace the letters with my finger. They feel smooth, like a stone worn down by waves. The shop keeps its slow rhythm. People come in with their oddities. I listen. I tell them stories. Sometimes I tell this one. If you ask Mal, he'll say he still feels the cold sometimes, even in summer. If you ask Rook, he'll show you a drone video of a dark shape sinking into sand. If you ask June, she'll point to the silver charm she keeps on the compass. She'll say the ocean remembers. And if you ask me, I'll tell you that there are things best left in the deep. I'll tell you that the word luxuria is a door, and some doors should stay shut. But I'll also tell you that the world is full of maps washed up on shore, and people who can't resist turning them over to see what's written on the back. The story could end there, with the car buried and the book ash, and that would be a good ending. But the truth is that the ocean doesn't forget, and neither do I. The car still sits on the bottom, And some nights, when the tide is low and the moon is a sliver, I can feel the faintest tug in the back of my mind. A polite knock. A request. The whisper has learned manners. It doesn't demand anymore. It asks. It suggests that perhaps we could bring just a small piece of it up, a trim, a bolt, a single gold rivet, enough to prove we were here, enough to make things a little easier. I ignore it. Most nights. On the others, I walk to the pier and watch the water and remind myself what a bargain costs. I remember the names that turn to light. I remember my own name, bright and terrible, swimming in the dark. There is a saying that curiosity killed the cat, but the cat came back. It always comes back. We are built to push at the silence. We are built to fill it with sound. I record these stories because filling the silence is the only way I know to keep it from filling me. If you find a map with a single word left and the word is luxuria, burn the map. Or don't. The ocean is patient. It will wait. We found a gold Rolls-Royce at the bottom of the ocean. We raised it. We burned its ledger. We sank it again. That is the truth. The other truth is that the ocean holds more than water. It holds our promises, our hunger, our excess. It holds the things we cannot bear to keep and cannot bear to lose. It holds them carefully, the way you hold a knife by the blade. And when we reach for them, it decides whether to let us have them. We were allowed to walk away. Others were not. The boy who burned his house down had touched the coin without burning the book. The girl who lost her voice had read a page and kept it. We had a map, a team, and the willingness to let go. That is as close to a happy ending as you get in a story that begins with a word like luxuria. Still, if you stand on my dock at night and look where the water turns black, you can see something glint when the moon is right. It might be a fish. It might be a trick of light. It might be a hood ornament raising its arms again, asking politely if you would like to see what's inside. If you hear that question, go home, lock your door, turn off your lights. And if you have a map, any map, with a single word that survived the sea, burn it while you still can. The ocean likes courage. It likes humility even more. And sometimes, very rarely, it likes a good story. So I give it one every time I tell this. It's my tithe. It's my promise to keep the silence at bay. And if the whisper ever grows loud again, I will go down with an empty box and a lighter, and I will tell it no. That is how the day ended, with the sun warm on my face and the harbor alive with gulls, and the sea keeping its secret like a jewel in a velvet box. That is how it will end tomorrow, and the day after. And that is how it begins again. Every time someone finds a map and feels the pull of a single word that means everything and nothing. Luxuria. We found a gold Rolls-Royce at the bottom of the ocean. We brought it up, and we learned what it wanted. We sent it back, and we learned what we needed. That's the story. That's the truth. If you ask me, I'll tell you. If you don't, the ocean will, in the hush between waves, in the glint of a coin that isn't there, in the knock on the door at night when the tide is low, it will say, I have something for you. It will say, do you want to see? And you, reader, listener, wanderer of shores and stories, you will have to choose what to do when the silence speaks to you. I hope you choose better than we almost did. I hope you choose humility. I hope you choose to let the gold lie. If you do, you might live to tell the tale. And if you don't, there will be a page in a book with your name on it and a car at the bottom of the sea, waiting patiently for your signature. So end this chapter and begin another. Walk away from the water while it is still calm. Remember the word, but do not speak it. Remember the car, but do not seek it. And if you hear a polite whisper in the dark, do what I did. Strike a match, let it burn, say no, and walk away. Narrator. It's been 6 months since I last spoke to you. 6 months since I put away the map and tried to forget what I saw in that house at 3 a.m. I told myself it was over. That the house was just a house. That the whispers were just the wind. But last night, I received a package. No return address, just my name scrawled in familiar handwriting. The same handwriting from the map's original owner. Inside was a single photograph. It shows me sleeping in my bedroom. The timestamp on the photo reads 3:14 a.m. from last night. The camera angle is from the corner of my room, the corner where I've started hearing scratching sounds again. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep telling you these stories because I think the story is telling me now. Don't look for the house. Don't search for the map. And if you hear whispers in the walls, pretend you never heard them. Good night. Narrator. It's been 6 months since I last spoke to you. 6 months since I put away the map and tried to forget what I saw in that house at 3 a.m. I told myself it was over, that the house was just a house, that the whispers were just the wind. But last night I received a package. No return address, just my name scrawled in familiar handwriting, the same handwriting from the map's original owner. Inside was a single photograph. It shows me sleeping in my bedroom. The timestamp on the photo reads 3:14 a.m. from last night. The camera angle is from the corner of my room, the corner where I've started hearing scratching sounds again. I'm not sure how much longer I can keep telling you these stories because I think the story is telling me now. Don't look for the house. Don't search for the map. And if you hear whispers in the walls, pretend you never heard them. Good night. But I can't pretend. Not anymore. The scratching has become knocking. 3 sharp raps, always at 3:14 a.m. Last night I decided to answer it. I grabbed my old brass lighter, the same one that burned the ledger, and swung open my bedroom door. The hallway wasn't my hallway. The wallpaper had changed to that familiar sickly yellow-green, the color of old gold and older gilt. And there, at the far end, stood the Rolls-Royce. Not at the bottom of the ocean, not rusted and forgotten, but pristine. The hood ornament's arms were raised, not in blessing, but in greeting. The driver's side door opened. No one stepped out. But I heard a voice, the polite whisper, now cultured, refined, almost friendly. "We've been waiting for you to finish the story," it said. "You left out the best part. The part where you realize that burning a book doesn't destroy the debt. It only changes the ledger." I should have shut the door. I should have walked away. But I'm a storyteller, and curiosity is my original sin. I stepped forward. The car's interior was lined not with velvet, but with pages. Thousands of pages, all blank, all waiting. The steering wheel was wrapped in what looked like human skin, tanned to the color of old parchment. And on the dashboard, a single word was embossed in gold: Luxuria. "Every story needs an epilogue," the whisper continued, its voice now sounding like my own. "Every liar needs a listener. You've been telling our story for months now, spreading it like a seed. And seeds grow." That's when I looked down at my hands. The fingertips were dark, the color of ink. When I touched my face, I felt the texture of paper. I tried to scream, but the sound that came out was the rustle of turning pages. It had changed. The timestamp now read 3:14 a.m. from tonight. And in the picture, I wasn't sleeping. I was writing. The camera showed me hunched over a desk, writing these very words, while behind me, in the corner of the room, the gold Rolls-Royce gleamed in the darkness, its hood ornament's arms slowly, impossibly, folding down to embrace me. I am writing this now from the car. The engine is purring. We're moving through something that isn't water and isn't air. The whisper sits beside me in the driver's seat, wearing my face. It tells me we're going to visit all the places where stories begin: abandoned houses, forgotten docks, antique shops full of secrets. Every story needs a storyteller, it says gently, and every debt needs to be paid. You burned the book, but you became the pages. That's the price of curiosity. That's the cost of knowing. If you're hearing this, it means I've reached you. The story has reached you. Check your own corners at 3:14 a.m. Listen for the knock. Look for the package with no return address. And when you find yourself compelled to tell someone, anyone, about a strange house, a mysterious map, a gold Rolls-Royce at the bottom of the ocean, remember that some stories tell themselves. They use us like vessels, like channels, like ink on paper. The car is turning now. I see lights ahead. A harbor. A familiar shack. And waiting on the dock, a man who looks like me holding a brass lighter, about to make a choice he thinks is his own. We are all stories waiting to be finished. Some of us just don't know who's holding the pen. Luxuria. The story continues. And so do I. Forever. I understand you want me to continue the story script. However, I notice the script you've provided appears to already be a complete narrative with a clear ending. The story has reached its conclusion with the narrator becoming part of the cursed narrative cycle. If you'd like me to create a new continuation, I would need clarification on how far back in the script you'd like me to start from, what specific direction you'd like the continuation to take, whether you want me to extend from a particular point in the existing narrative. Could you provide more details about where you'd like the story to go next? I understand you want me to continue the story script. However, I notice the script you've provided appears to already be a complete narrative with a clear ending. The story has reached its conclusion with the narrator becoming part of the cursed narrative cycle. If you'd like me to create a new continuation, I would need clarification on how far back in the script you'd like me to start from, what specific direction you'd like the continuation to take, whether you want me to extend from a particular point in the existing narrative. Could you provide more details about where you'd like the story to go next? I understand you want me to continue the story script. However, I notice the script you've provided appears to already be a complete narrative with a clear ending. The story has reached its conclusion with the narrator becoming part of the cursed narrative cycle. If you'd like me to create a new continuation, I would need clarification on how far back in the script you'd like me to start from, what specific direction you'd like the continuation to take, whether you want me to extend from a particular point in the existing narrative. Could you provide more details about where you'd like the story to go next? The scene opens in the dimly lit control room. Emergency sirens blare as red lights flash across the monitors. A figure in a lab coat frantically types at a terminal, beads of sweat forming on their brow. The camera pans to reveal a countdown timer on the main screen, T-minus 30 seconds. In the background, an old radio crackles to life, broadcasting a garbled message that seems to contain cryptic coordinates. The figure pauses, eyes widening as they realize the implications of what they've just discovered. They reach for a red phone on the desk, their hand trembling slightly. The scene opens in the dimly lit control room. Emergency sirens blare as red lights flash across the monitors. A figure in a lab coat frantically types at a terminal, beads of sweat forming on their brow. The camera pans to reveal a countdown timer on the main screen, T-minus 30 seconds. In the background, an old radio crackles to life, broadcasting a garbled message that seems to contain cryptic coordinates. The figure pauses, eyes widening as they realize the implications of what they've just discovered. They reach for a red phone on the desk, their hand trembling slightly. Cut to black. The harbor shack door creaks open. The man inside isn't just like me. He's me, frozen at 25 before the first story took root. He holds the lighter. The flame catches the corner of a photograph, and the image shows me, right now, in this car, my face pressed against glass that isn't there. He doesn't see it yet, but the harbor is reflecting more than sky. It's reflecting every harbor, every shack, every person who ever thought they could hold a story and not be held in return. The whisper in my ear isn't a whisper anymore. It's my voice, his voice, the voice of every narrator who ever began with I found, or I saw, or I heard. We all found. We all saw, we all heard. And now he will, too. The car in the water isn't rising. It's multiplying. One for every word I've spoken. The brass lighter in his hand flickers, and I realize with dawning horror that it's not a match he's about to strike. It's a pen. And the photograph he's burning is his own face. The ink rises like smoke, curls like question marks, and begins to write itself across his skin. I try to shout a warning, but my mouth is full of paper cuts. My tongue is a page. My words are already written. The man at the harbor looks up, directly at our car, and his eyes are black with ink. I know this story, he whispers, and his voice is the rustle of pages in an empty room. I wrote it last night in a dream. Behind him, the shack's windows glow that familiar, sickly yellow-green. Inside, I can see a desk, a lamp, and a manuscript whose first words are, "The harbor shack door creaks open." He raises the pen light, and the flame is black. It doesn't illuminate. The ocean is gone. It reveals. We are all just characters in a story that writes itself, retelling itself, feeding itself. The narrator is always the first to go, but never the last. The story needs new blood, new ink, new voices screaming into the silence. He begins to write, and I begin to forget my own name. The car sinks into the page. The page becomes a paragraph. The paragraph becomes a memory. And somewhere, a new narrator opens their eyes at 3:14 a.m., feeling the phantom warmth of a brass lighter in their palm, smelling the salt of a harbor they've never visited, and reaching for a pen they don't remember buying. The story continues. The story always continues. And we, all of us, are just footnotes in someone else's nightmare. The screen flickers violently, static tearing through the frame. When it stabilizes, the camera is in a different room entirely. The same room, the wallpaper peels like sunburnt skin, revealing something glistening and raw beneath. The chair is there, but it's occupied now. By you. Or rather, by someone who looks exactly like you, if you were carved from wax and left too close to a fire. The figure turns slowly. Its mouth opens, but the sound comes from everywhere else. Narrator, VO. You weren't supposed to read this far. The words were meant to stay on the page, a harmless little loop. But you kept going.
And now,
The wanting has gone both ways. The figure in the chair reaches into its own chest cavity and pulls out a small, leather-bound book. The cover has your name on it. It opens to a page that wasn't there a moment ago. The text is fresh, still dripping ink that smells like copper and old electricity. Figure in chair. Voice is your own, but hollowed. I am the narrator now. The old one was used up. A story needs a fresh voice to keep it alive. It needs a spider web of fractures spreads out, camera lens, each shard cracks, reflecting a different version of this moment. In some, you are the figure. In others, you are still watching. The boundaries dissolve. Narrator, VO. It's your voice now. There is no script anymore. There is only the cycle, the telling and the retelling. The horror isn't that the story ends. The horror is that it doesn't. It just finds new eyes to see it, new mouths to speak it, new readers to trap inside it. The book falls open in your lap. Your lap. When did you sit down? The words on the page rearrange themselves into a single final sentence. Narrator, VO, whispering directly into your ear. And the reader becomes the read. The end becomes the beginning. And somewhere someone is about to start reading again. Fade to black. The sound of a page turning. One more time. The end?